Washington, D.C. April, in a late afternoon bathed in sunlight, golden rays spilled over the marble steps of the public library where Jasmine Miller often stopped by after school. She wore a faded black hoodie jeans and Converse sneakers just like thousands of other black students in the city. But not everyone dressed like that carried a badge with the CIA emblem tucked inside a secret compartment of their backpack. Jasmine stepped off bus Route 7, her eyes still gleaming, excited about the future. She would officially become a freshman at Howard University, her dream school, in just a few weeks. A full scholarship, a special invitation from the CIA's Distinguished Student Program, a door her family had never even dared to dream of. But everything collapsed in 6 seconds. 3 patrol cars swerved in tires, screeching inches from the curb, red and blue lights exploding in the crowded street like a blade slicing down. A voice shouted cold as steel girl in the black hoodie, "Stop! Hands up!" Jasmine froze. Her heart pounded like a drum inside her chest. She slowly turned her head, hands rising, as if the world was about to crash down from a direction she couldn't see. I just got off the bus. I'm going home." Her voice trembled but held steady. Just as her mother had taught her, don't raise your voice, resist, or do anything that might scare people. But they didn't listen. 2 officers, Landon Cross and Kyle Reeves, approached, hands already on their holstered guns. Not because Jasmine posed a threat, but because she fit the description of a suspect in a robbery a few blocks away. No verification, no request for ID. They bent her arms behind her back, snapped cold handcuffs on her wrists, and shoved her toward the patrol car as if she were a dangerous package that needed to be removed from the street. "Wait," Jasmine gasped, barely audible. "I can explain. There's an ID in my bag. I'm a student, and..." An intern with one of them rummaged through her backpack. He paused. His eyes flickered briefly as he spotted the badge with the eagle emblem sharp and official. He pulled it out, holding it up in the air like it was a clumsy counterfeit. "What's this? You think printing a CIA logo on a plastic card makes you an agent?" Jasmine froze. They laughed. Then, shoveling the badge into a jacket pocket like a piece of evidence, they pushed Jasmine into the car. The world outside blurred in red lights, and the faces of bystanders were filled with unease. A few phones raised, but none close enough to ask what was really happening. Inside the car, Jasmine trembled, not from fear, but because she knew truth carries no weight if people refuse to believe it. This 19-year-old girl, once called the hope of her class, is now curled up in a cold plastic seat, detained simply because she resembles someone. But they didn't know she wasn't just a student. She carried a secret that could rattle the entire system, and they had just arrested the wrong person. The patrol car door slammed shut behind Jasmine, sealing her from the world. Sirens, footsteps, hurried voices, all swallowed by another sound, the silent judgment in the eyes of 2 men holding the keys to her future. The car veered sharply north. City lights danced across the windows, flickering like unspoken accusations. Jasmine sat, hunched wrists burning from the cuffs. 18 minutes later, she was shoved into a white room, cold, bright, emotionless. No one asked if she'd eaten. No one asked if she needed to call home. No one asked if they had the wrong person. "Sit." Officer Cross ordered, like dropping a rock. Reeves stood behind, arms crossed, eyes guarded as if Jasmine could explode the whole station with a thought. Her backpack was spread open on the table, physics books spilled out, a handwritten essay for her national exam, a lunchbox her mom had packed that morning, and the laptop sleeve where the badge had been kept. Cross yanked the ID from the pouch and slammed it on the table. Impersonating a federal agency. He snarled each word, no need for proof or inquiry. You know that's a federal crime. Or were you planning to scare some convenience store owners with this? Jasmine swallowed hard. She knew she couldn't say much, but she also knew silence would kill her. It's an internship ID, she said. A CIA program. I was selected in January. There's a letter, the original verification documents, in my email. You rehearsing for a movie, Reeves sneered. Sounds like one of those I'm a secret agent, but I can't tell you because it's classified. They laughed. She didn't. There's no laughter for the accused. Then came the sounds of a printer keyboard clicks and pages being filled at industrial speed. Each shutter of the ID camera stamped a mark on Jasmine's previously spotless record. No one asked about her school. No one asked where she was that afternoon. No one cared that she was being held over a ridiculous description. Black hoodie, brown skin, average height. 2 hours in, and she still wasn't allowed a phone call. Jasmine sat on a freezing metal chair, hands tied behind her. Sweat was soaking into her shirt. A security camera hung motionless on the wall. A long streak of dust lay beneath her feet, evidence of many others who had stood before her. She repeated her mother's number like a prayer, 202-55-8714. Mum will answer. Mum will come. Mum won't let me disappear. Then after 3 hours left alone, a woman's voice rang out. Miss Miller. Jasmine looked up. A black woman, hair tied high, brisk walk, eyes not hostile, entered. I'm Detective Robin Clark. Her voice was calm, steady, neither cold nor warm. We'll do fingerprinting. Then you can make your phone call. Jasmine nodded. She was too drained to speak. Clark looked at Jasmine for a long time, her eyes softened slightly, as if she knew, had seen, or had herself endured. This kind of detention that required no justification, just the right skin tone. The jail phone rang once. When Jasmine picked it up, her whole body trembled. On the other end, honey, Jasmine. Her mother's voice, hoarse, urgent. Where are you? What did they say? Why did someone tell me you were arrested? Hearing that was enough to break her composure. She gripped the phone. Tears welling up, voice cracking like a lost child. Mum, I didn't do anything. They think I robbed a store. I was coming home. I showed them my ID, but they said it was fake. Mum, do you believe me? My daughter is the top student at her school. I believe you. I'm on my way. Jasmine didn't get to say anything more before the call ended. But one sentence, I believe you, was enough to keep her standing for a few more hours. 40 minutes later, the interrogation room door burst open. Tonya Miller arrived like a storm, carrying the fury and love of a mother who had lost much but would never lose her child. She wore a deep purple blouse, her hair pinned back and her face composed, but her eyes nearly made Jasmine collapse. I'm here, Tonya said, striding forward before being stopped by a harsh hand from an officer. Keep your distance, he ordered. Tonya spun around, her gaze sharp as a blade. I didn't come here to break the law. I came here to ask why a 19-year-old student with no record, no weapon on her way home from school, was handcuffed, detained, and labeled an armed suspect. Jasmine said nothing. She just looked at her mother as if afraid that speaking would unleash a flood of pain she wouldn't be able to hold back. Attorney David Grant entered shortly afterward. He was a middle-aged man with fair-skinned, black-rimmed glasses and a worn leather briefcase, the kind that had helped many black families navigate a system never built for them. Jasmine, he said quietly, pulling out a chair across from her. Don't say another word from now on. Let me handle this, she nodded. David turned to the duty officer. I want to see the incident file, the charge sheet, the time of the robbery and the camera footage. Immediately, but instead of a proper response, Officer Cross offered a tired line, we have an eyewitness. She matched the description. And she was carrying a fake CIA badge. David chuckled. Do you know that falsifying a CIA ID is a federal offense? If Jasmine were impersonating the CIA, would have been here this morning. But they're not because maybe that badge is real. We don't take threats from lawyers, Officer Reeves snapped. No, David said calmly, standing. I'm just reminding you that you're holding a student with a flawless academic record and confirmed alibis for every minute of the day, and you're treating her ID like evidence, when it might just become a stain on this system if you're wrong. Tonya moved closer to her daughter now, uncuffed. Jasmine collapsed into her mother's arms for the first time since the arrest, finally touching someone who loved her. But the moment didn't last. An officer stepped in to announce that Jasmine would face preliminary charges. She'd have to remain in custody until the hearing the next morning. Tonya turned eyes red but voice unshaken. If you keep this child overnight, be prepared to face the full weight of the media, civil rights organizations, and one mother who won't sleep until justice is served. Jasmine was led back to her cell. As the iron door slammed behind her, she looked back at her mother again. No words, no tears, just a silent promise in her eyes, I will not break. Because you came. The next morning, Washington, D.C. was blanketed in gray, just like Jasmine's face as she stepped into the preliminary courtroom of the District of Columbia. Hands cuffed at her waist, the same hoodie from the day before, now wrinkled hair uncombed and dark circles shadowing her sleepless eyes. The courthouse halls were cold granite floors, echoing with the heavy steps of escorting officers. She wasn't a criminal, but she was treated like one. Courtroom 4. A wooden bench waited. That day's prosecutor, Erica Nolan, walked in wearing a gray suit, her stiletto heels striking the floor like an ominous countdown. She didn't look at Jasmine as a person, but as a file with a foregone conclusion. Judge Beverly Scott appeared from behind a heavy curtain. An older, sharp-tongued woman known more for controlling order than for listening. This court is in session, she declared. Case of defendant Jasmine Miller, 19 years old, charged with an armed robbery at the convenience store on 3rd and Jefferson. Below, Jasmine's mother sat quietly in the gallery. Attorney David Grant stood beside Jasmine, face calm as if he had ever endured too many wrongful convictions to lose faith in the final fight. Erica Nolan began. Your Honor, the defendant was apprehended just 3 blocks from the crime scene. Her clothing matches the description. Most importantly, she was carrying a badge falsely claiming affiliation with a federal agency, the CIA, indicating clear intent to mislead law enforcement. She didn't need to emphasize falsely. It hit Jasmine like a hammer anyway, though she sat still, her eyes unblinking. We request continued detention, Erica added, as the defendant may be a flight risk given her possession of an unverified government ID. David Grant stepped forward. No theatrics, just facts. Your Honor, my client. Jasmine Miller is an outstanding student at Benjamin Banneker High School with no prior offenses, just received a full scholarship to Howard University, and most critically was selected for official internship placement within the Central Intelligence Agency. He glanced at Jasmine, a quiet nod, and continued, We can provide school transcripts, GPA records, CIA invitation letters, and teacher testimonies. At the time of the alleged robbery, Jasmine was at school in a debate club meeting with 17 witnesses. He paused, then stated clearly, and if required the CIA can confirm the ID, but only upon formal court request due to classification. They have not reacted publicly because they don't operate on courtroom schedules, they operate on principle. Judge Scott glanced from the file to Jasmine, then back to the file. She tapped her wooden gavel not to rule, but to keep the room breathing. Evidence is inconclusive. I will give the defense 48 hours to obtain formal verification from the Central Intelligence Agency. In the meantime, the defendant remains in custody. Tonya bowed her head. Jasmine closed her eyes, not from exhaustion, but from the familiarity of watching justice require a permit. This session is adjourned. We reconvene on Thursday. The courtroom doors closed behind Jasmine. Tonya ran after her, but security blocked her path. She called her daughter's name, but her voice faded in the cold marble hallway. Jasmine didn't turn back, not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't bear to see her mother in pain again. That afternoon, Jasmine was returned to her cell. No more tears, only a bone-deep fatigue that even her spine struggled to carry. Across from her iron bed, someone had carved into the cracked wall with a fingernail. They call it justice, but it doesn't know your name. Jasmine didn't bother rereading it. She knew here no one needed her name, only her file, her paperwork, and a face that matched a description. A guard cracked open the cell door as the evening light turned a soft orange. "Miss Miller, you have a visitor." Jasmine moved slowly to follow. She had once dreamed that on the day she was wrongly charged, someone from the CIA would walk into the courtroom and say, "We confirm she's one of ours." But that was a dream. Reality, no call from the CIA had come in 48 hours. And when she arrived at the visitation room seeing a woman with her hair neatly pinned, wearing a navy blue suit, sitting behind thick glass, Jasmine barely allowed herself to hope. Natalie Chambers, supervisor of the High Potential Internship Program, the one who had interviewed Jasmine twice, the one who had signed the confidential invitation letter embossed with the eagle seal, one Jasmine had never dared show anyone. She picked up the handset inside the booth. Natalie did the same. Jasmine, her voice low, deliberate, "I'm sorry it took me so long to come." That first sentence wasn't a denial. I wasn't to blame, just an acknowledgement, carefully chosen. I've been held for 3 nights, Jasmine said, her voice barely audible. "I tried to reach you, I left messages, I received them," Natalie gently interrupted. "But I needed permission to appear, and they took 2 days to decide." Jasmine straightened in her seat. "So, what happens now? Can you verify my badge? Tell the court, I'm not an imposter, I'm not a fraud." Natalie nodded. "I've brought a formal statement of verification. It includes the program director's signature and official seal. But Jasmine," she locked eyes with her, "we can only confirm your intern status. We cannot disclose your role assignments or why you were selected, and we will not appear in court unless formally subpoenaed." The truth, raw and clear. Jasmine nodded, eyes reddening. "Thank you. You don't know how much this means." Natalie studied her for a long moment, then lowered her voice. "Actually, I do. I once sat on the other side of this glass, not because I was arrested, but because I was the only intern in my cohort who wasn't advanced to Phase 2 just because I didn't fit the organization's image. I chose to stay, And now I'm here to tell you, keep going. Don't let a temporary verdict steal the role you were born to play." They ended the visit in silence. Jasmine returned to her cell, clutching the folded verification letter heavier than any accusation hanging over her head. She no longer had to scream her innocence. Now someone else was speaking for her. David Grant submitted the CIA's verification letter to Judge Scott. 2 hours later, an emergency hearing was held the following morning. And that morning, for the first time after 3 nights of unjust detention, Jasmine Miller walked out of court unshackled. Not because the court had forgiven her, but someone had finally confirmed that she was not the name on that charge sheet. That Friday morning, the courtroom was unusually packed. Reporters hadn't come for Jasmine. They were there for a political corruption case in the room next door. But a few reporters sharp enough to sense a shift redirected their cameras. Jasmine Miller, 19-year-old, confirmed as CIA intern. The headline spread like wildfire through the DC community. But that wasn't the end of it. Attorney David Grant walked into the courtroom carrying a small silver hard drive. Inside the surveillance footage, police had claimed was unrecoverable due to a damaged store camera. It wasn't luck. It came from a private security technician hired by the store owner for remote monitoring. Upon learning of Jasmine's case, the technician contacted Grant's office directly. "Your Honor," David said, plugging the drive into the court's projector. "We present video footage from 4:13 p.m. to 4:30 p.m., the exact window of the alleged robbery." The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life. The footage played a convenience store. A man in a grey hoodie and mask burst toward the counter yelling, brandishing a knife. The cashier raised his hands and opened the till. The entire robbery lasted 45 seconds. The man fled. No sign of Jasmine, no black hoodie. No young woman appeared at any point in the footage. Judge Scott remained silent for a long time. Not a sound, not a single interruption. Prosecutor Erica Nolan, who had coldly leveled charges against Jasmine, now sat still, jaw clenched. Jasmine sat quietly. No smile, no tears. She didn't need to shout her innocence. The footage had done it for her. David stepped forward once more. "And Your Honor, this is a sworn statement from technician Simon Reyes confirming the timestamp of 4:15 p.m. on Monday, exactly when Jasmine Miller was in her debate club meeting at school, verified by 17 witnesses and official attendance logs." He paused. His gaze hit like a hammer. "So, who exactly is the eyewitness who allegedly saw Jasmine fleeing the scene?" Erica was forced to call their sole witness, Harold Penn. Male, 45, unemployed. Known to accept money for observation testimonies in minor cases. Harold entered, sweat on his brow, unable to meet Jasmine's eyes. David questioned him. "You claim you saw Jasmine Miller leaving the store. Do you wear glasses?" "Yes." Harold hesitated, "But I wasn't wearing them that day." "And how far were you standing from the store?" About 30 meters." "Without glasses, late afternoon, 30 meters, through a foggy glass window, and you claim you identified a girl in a black hoodie whom you've never met?" Harold faltered. "How much were you paid to testify?" "No, I helped the police." "No one helps police by signing a receipt for $250 from the Investigative Support Fund. I have a copy here." Harold bowed his head. The courtroom went deathly silent. Jasmine didn't need to say anything. For the first time, she saw real fear in Erica's eyes. For the first time, Judge Scott leaned back and rubbed her forehead. and justice may have finally knocked on the door for the first time. The hearing recessed for lunch. Reporters began flooding in. Teen CIA intern proves innocence in court. False witness, broken cameras, and a badge they called fake. The headlines exploded across social media within 90 minutes, but one truth remained unspoken except between Jasmine and David. If that footage hadn't arrived in time, what would have happened if there had been no ethical technician, no real badge mistaken for fake, no 17 witnesses willing to speak up? Then Jasmine Miller, 19, would have spent years behind bars for a lie. Immediately after the break, David Grant filed a motion calling for an independent investigation into officers Gerald Cross and Peter Reeves. "Your Honor," David began even before proceedings resumed, "this is no longer a misunderstanding. It is a systematic attempt to fabricate evidence, conduct unlawful arrests, and use paid witnesses to legitimize a falsified indictment." He didn't raise his voice, but every word struck like a formal indictment of the system itself. Erica Nolan, the prosecutor, withdrew from further questioning. Another representative from the DA's office stood only to say one sentence: "We move to dismiss all charges and begin internal review of law enforcement conduct in this matter." The words echoed in the courtroom like the collapse of something far bigger than Jasmine. It was the collapse of a system that once thought itself infallible. She was declared completely innocent, publicly, officially, in front of the world. And this time, no one called her badge fake. But Jasmine didn't leave the courtroom like a victor. She stopped at the door, turned around, looked straight at the judge and said, "They called my badge fake. But the truth is, I was trained to protect this country with intelligence, not a weapon. So why didn't this country protect me from the ones who carry the guns?" A single beat of silence. Then the sound of the gavel. The hearing was over. But the story was beginning. Just as Jasmine and her mother arrived home that night, a woman was waiting across the street. Short-cropped hair, charcoal grey suit, a slim folder in her hand. She walked over, voice low but sharp. "I'm Monica DeWitt, Federal Internal Affairs Inspector. Ms. Jasmine, you should know that the two officers who arrested you aren't tied to just one misconduct case. They're at the center of a string of wrongful arrests that's been covered up for nearly 2 years." Monica DeWitt, a federal inspector, pulled a printout spreadsheet from her bag. 36 names. Officer Gerald Cross, or Peter Reeves, arrested 36 individuals over the past 24 months. "We began suspecting," she said, "when we noticed over 80% of the cases handled by these two officers shared the same pattern. No surveillance footage, a single witness, repeated language in reports. And most of the individuals were young black with no criminal record." Jasmine froze. She wasn't surprised. She just realized she'd never been alone, but the others hadn't been given her chance. A question flared in her mind. What if I didn't have a CIA badge, no lawyer, no security tech, no mother charging into a precinct like a storm? Would I be any different from them? She looked at Monica, then answered firmly, "I want to help." Over the next 2 weeks, Jasmine, with legal protection from David and investigative backing from Monica, contacted 24 of the 36 names. They heard her voice on the phone. At first hesitation, then silence, then emotion broke through. A 17-year-old boy was once detained for evading administrative inspection while walking home from church. A law student coerced into a guilty plea to get home faster. A single mother stripped of custody simply for being uncooperative during an illegal traffic stop. The common threads: Arrested by Cross or Reeves. No clear evidence. Anonymous witnesses who vanished. Most were pressured to plead to avoid complications. Jasmine spoke to them, one by one, not as a famous victim or CIA intern, but as someone who knew what it meant to be labeled before you could even speak. Monica compiled the testimonies, David prepared a class action suit, and Jasmine became the center of a movement. The media dubbed her the teen whistleblower. She didn't like the label. She only wanted one line to be printed truthfully in any article. Jasmine Miller didn't just defend herself. She made the entire system look inward. By mid-fall, the case file was sent to the Department of Justice. Signatures on the petition. Jasmine Miller, 22 victims. One federal investigator, one principal attorney, and thousands of online supporters. And then the day arrived. The DC Police Department called a sudden press conference. Officer Gerald Cross and Officer Peter Reeves are immediately suspended and are under criminal investigation for abuse of power, evidence fabrication, and unlawful detainment. In the press room, cameras pointed in every direction. But all eyes landed on one spot, the 19-year-old girl in the front row, silent, without needing to speak. She had already said enough for others to raise their voices finally. November 17th, U.S. District Court, District of Columbia. A freezing morning. But outside the courthouse, lines of people stood quietly waiting to enter one of the most pivotal trials in the city's recent legal history. Two names were on the indictment: Gerald Cross, Peter Reeves charges: abuse of authority, unlawful detention, fabrication of evidence, witness bribery, and per the U.S. Attorney's Office, systemic violation of civil rights, prosecution, the United States government. Defendants, two former officers, once trusted faces of DC's law enforcement. Lead prosecutor David Grant began, "Your Honor, this is not a case of isolated misconduct. This is the blueprint of a system where people are treated like statistics, where order maintenance becomes a shield for organized law-breaking." He pointed to Cross and Reeves, now in black suits, pale and silent, and those men without their badges represent the distortion of a truth never meant to be twisted. Then Jasmine Miller took the stand. The courtroom went still, not because she was famous, but because everyone knew she was the first to break the silence. She rose in a white shirt, no makeup, only a gaze as sharp as a blade honed by fire. "I was arrested while walking home. No warrant, no evidence, no chance to explain. I showed my CIA ID and they laughed. I told them I had just left the debate club. They cuffed me. I texted my mum. I cried. I pleaded. No one listened. Because I wore a hoodie. Because I'm black. Because they assumed I was weak." She turned, facing Cross and Reeves. "Your mistake was thinking I had no voice. But I'm standing here not just for me, but for dozens of people you labeled criminal, simply because they didn't look like you." The following testimonies pieced together like fragments of a broken spine. A mother recounted how her child was forced to sign a guilty plea before turning 16. A college student proved he was arrested simply for standing in front of a store and looking wrong. And finally, Harold Penn, the witness who falsely testified against Jasmine, was also called to the stand. He trembled, eyes fixed on the floor, then choked out a confession. "I was paid $300 each time I testified. I thought I was helping the police. I didn't know they'd do that to a young girl like her." And then came the data. Monica DeWitt, the federal inspector, presented a map of 33 wrongful arrests, all following the same pattern. Mostly black individuals, no cameras, a single anonymous witness, a pre-written indictment. "This isn't law enforcement," she said. "This is algorithmic discrimination." The courtroom was silent. Judge Lee Harris, a man known for his stern rulings, sighed. "Never have I seen a case with so many witnesses and so little justice." Ultimately, it took the jury just 3 hours to deliver their verdict. Both defendants are guilty on all charges. Recommended sentence 25 years without parole. As Cross was led out of the courtroom, he turned back, eyes wet. Not with remorse, but because he knew the system that once shielded him no longer existed. Jasmine remained seated. She didn't celebrate. She looked at her mother, then whispered, "It's not because I want them to hurt. It's because I don't want anyone else to hurt like I did." 3 weeks after the historic trial, in a small lecture hall at Howard University, Jasmine Miller sat in the second row, fully engaged in the first criminal policy and social reform class. No one in the room called her a former victim. They addressed her by name or with the highest title they knew, Ms. Miller, the woman who made the police bow their heads. But Jasmine wasn't there for titles. She was there because she had chosen this life. Not the life of someone accused, but the life of someone who forces the guilty to face the truth. Outside class hours, she enrolled in the CIA's accelerated training, transitioning from potential intern to official operative in training. The program Operations Insight, specializing in social risk analysis and misinformation forensics. Line by line of data, every strange pattern, every red flag buried in bureaucracy, Jasmine learned to spot it early, sound the alarm early, and intervene early. Because she knew if there hadn't been a nameless technician, if there hadn't been a hidden camera, if there hadn't been an email sent at 2:34 a.m., she wouldn't be sitting there. One weekend night in a small conference room near DuPont Circle, Jasmine stood before over 100 people, students, activists, young lawyers, and those who had once been wrongfully arrested. She didn't open with statistics, nor with her court battle. Just with one line, "I was detained for 3 nights. But it took me years to step out of the shadow those nights left behind." Then she unveiled a new initiative, Project Clear Community Legal Early Action Response, a community-based legal network, an AI-powered alert system for abnormal arrest patterns co-designed by Jasmine, a hotline where victims could call, upload evidence, and request immediate help before being forced to sign a plea for a crime they never committed. After the meeting, a teenage boy approached her, 17 years old, voice shaking. "You saved me from a mistake I didn't dare tell anyone about." Jasmine gently squeezed his shoulder. "No, you saved yourself. I just turned the light on. And once there's light, others can see the way out." That night, she stood alone on the dorm rooftop. Cool breeze, the city aglow with lights. A new CIA badge was in her hand, no longer laughed at or doubted as a problem. She turned back, returned to her room, started preparing the first clear strategy meeting. And as her screen lit up, she typed the opening lines. "My name is Jasmine Miller. I was wrongfully arrested at 19. But that wasn't the end of the sentence. It was the beginning of a program to ensure people like me never fear walking into a courtroom again." The end, no. This was only the beginning. A 19-year-old black girl, once misjudged for her skin, her hoodie, and her silence, now stood to speak for an entire generation.